Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for Wight, welcoming you to this week's Talking News. What a busy week we've had. On Thursday, 50 members, volunteers and staff gathered at the Isle of Wight College for the Site for Wight Christmas lunch. Everybody thoroughly enjoyed the 3-course meal presented to us by the students. There was starters, mains, desserts, followed by mince pies with a crumble top, which are my particular favourite. There were so many empty plates and smiling faces and lots of chatter going on throughout the whole meal. Thank you very much to the Isle of Wight College for putting on such a wonderful spread for us. Today, Saturday, is the Site for Wight Christmas Fair. So whilst I'm recording this on Friday before the event has actually taken place, I know that Millbrook House is abuzz with stalls all setting up ready for tomorrow's fair. I can't quite believe that it is December next week and Christmas is almost around the corner. Whilst my children will be very excited to know what Santa will bring them, not everybody is as lucky to be near family at Christmas. So please take a moment to think ahead and think how you may plan to include people who perhaps live on their own over the Christmas period. Make a plan when to visit them or call them, or perhaps just pop a card in the post to them. Everybody appreciates being thought of, especially at a time of year like Christmas. Please, everybody, stay safe. The pandemic's not over yet, but hopefully there is light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you, Lisa.
This is Chris, reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Isle of Wight Conservative leader steps down due to ill health. Councillor Steve Hastings has stepped down as leader of the Isle of Wight Conservatives. Councillor Hastings, who was chosen to succeed Councillor Dave Stewart in May, announced he is stepping aside due to ill health. In a statement, he said he needs to prioritise my health over the coming weeks and months. Councillor Hastings said, "In May, I was chosen by my colleagues to lead the Conservative group at County Hall. I was also subsequently elected as chair of the Council's Corporate Scrutiny Committee. A few weeks ago, I became ill and have been on medication and receiving treatment since then. I am grateful to all fellow members of the Isle of Wight Council for their kind words of support and good wishes. My thanks also to Councillor Chris Quirk for chairing the Corporate Scrutiny Committee in my absence. Although I have begun to improve, I am still far from back to full strength. I need to prioritise my health over the coming weeks and months in order that I have the best possible prospects of a full recovery. I have therefore decided to step down as leader of the Conservative group with immediate effect. This does not affect my work as the ward councillor for Bryston, Calbourne and Shelfleet, which has always been my primary focus. I will also continue as chair of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee until January, when the new leadership of the Conservative group will put forward a nomination to replace me at that month's full council meeting. The Conservative group on the Isle of Wight Council is expected to elect a new leader on December the 3rd.
This is Brian, reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Royal Navy delivers tiger tombola to Isle of Wight Animal Sanctuary. British Royal Navy members were tasked to the Isle of Wight Animal Sanctuary this week to install a giant tiger tombola toy. The toy, which measures 1.3 by 1.4 metres, was crafted by Bembridge carpentry expert Alistair Nye. 8 members of the British Royal Navy came over from the mainland as part of a team building exercise. The task to install it within the tiger's habitat combined strength, ingenuity and problem-solving skills. Alistair Nye said, "I was so thrilled to see all 3 tigers investigate the tombola immediately. It was a proud moment to see the toy in action and showed me that all the hours of design, production and craftsmanship had been worthwhile. When I first met the team at the Wild Heart Animal Sanctuary to get the brief for the project, I learned so much about how vital enrichment is to the welfare of their animals, both mentally and physically, so I knew it was crucial to get the project absolutely right. It was amazing to see the tigers interacting with something I had put so much time and effort into. Earlier this year, the Wild Heart Sanctuary commenced a nationwide search for a skilled carpentry and DIY expert to design and create a toy that would stimulate the tigers' senses and challenge them both physically and mentally. The sanctuary posted their request on Airtasker, a marketplace that connects people who need tasks done with skilled professionals, and offered £500 for an individual to complete the task. 41-year-old Alistair was selected and designed an octagonal toy made out of plywood. It spins to allow the tigers to explore the compartments while it rotates. There is also a sliding door which opens to a compartment where the keepers can hide treats. Lawrence Bates, CEO of the Wild Heart Sanctuary, said, "The Wild Heart Sanctuary is a special forever home for tigers, lions, lynx, lemurs, monkeys, meerkats and reptiles to flourish in a caring environment." As part of our commitment, we partnered with Airtasker to find someone in the local community who could use their skills to create a toy that would keep our 3 tigers happy, fulfilled and stimulated, both physically and mentally. We were proud to offer a unique opportunity for a tasker like Alistair to use his carpentry skills and creativity to monetize his skills to create a bespoke toy for our tigers. We were impressed by how quickly we were connected with Alistair, and from his skilled craftsmanship to create ideas, he certainly delivered. The variety of skilled taskers on the platform is fantastic, and we'll definitely use Airtasker again for similar tasks and also in our daily lives. The toy has now been given to the sanctuary's 3 female tigers, Natasha, Zoppa and Antonella, who came to the Wild Heart Animal Sanctuary in 2018, having been rescued from a travelling circus in Spain by rescue partner Animal Advocacy and Protection, AAP. Natasha, aged 7, is the youngest and most vibrant of the females, both affectionate and curious, and likes to think she's the boss. Zoppa, aged 9, is in fact lame on her front leg. The word Zoppa translates to lame or limping in Italian, and although her injury is a permanent disability, she has adapted to it and lives a very good life. In fact, she was the first one to play with the toys when they were brought out. Anatella, aged 16, is the oldest of the tigers and described as a completely awe-inspiring individual. She is more introverted than her companions and is quite happy in her own company, often giving the impression of being rather aloof. She can, however, be kitten-like and sociable too. When she does interact, she has a breathtaking presence. Airtasker Tim Fung said, "It's super exciting to see Alistair share his unique skills with the Wild Heart Sanctuary to create something truly special that enriches the tigers' lives." As an open marketplace, there's an infinite range of things you can get done on Airtasker. And while you can find skilled professionals to build bespoke toys like this, you can also use Airtasker to get help with everyday tasks like furniture assembly, painting, or even hanging a picture, he said.
This is Den reading an article from On the Wight. Developing Camp Hill for housing, not a priority, say Isle of Wight Council. The former Conservative administration wanted to turn Camp Hill into a garden village with an estimated 1,500 homes. The development of the now deserted Camp Hill prison in Parkhurst is not a priority for the new Isle of Wight Council. Despite infrastructure improvements and a hope to build more than 1,000 homes on the brownfield site at Parkhurst, Deputy Leader of the Isle of Wight Council, Councillor Ian Stevens, told the Neighbourhoods and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee last night the Alliance administration is not looking towards Camp Hill. Looking at the progress the Council's housing strategy has made in the last year, Councillor Stevens was asked whether there were any items at risk. Councillor Stevens highlighted one area of the strategy which was put together by the previous Conservative administration to work with the Ministry of Justice to bring forward the key strategic housing site to deliver homes in the next 10 years. Speaking after the meeting, Councillor Stevens said it was not one of the administration's priorities, with other sites to focus on. These are the former Island Learning Centre in Lake, Thompson House in Gatcombe, and the former Western Academy in Totland, providing around 70 homes. The council has just been given nearly £1 million to invest in and build houses on the 3 brownfield sites. The former Conservative administration wanted to turn Camp Hill into a garden village with an estimated 1,500 homes. The reworking of the St Mary's roundabout into a junction was done partially with the major development in mind to cope with the future increase in traffic. A £6.3 million deal had been brokered between the Isle of Wight Council and the Ministry of Justice to take over some of the prison estate's neglected highways and bring them up to scratch. It was hoped at the time the deal could help strengthen the partnership between the two and make Camp Hill available for purchase. Work has since started to improve the roads.
Hello, this is an article from the Island Echo read by Sue. Sir Paul McCartney offered a ticket to Ryde by town's mayor. Mayor of Ryde, Michael Lilly, says he would like to officially welcome Sir Paul McCartney to Ryde to visit the seaside town that inspired the Beatles hit Ticket to Ride. During a recent appearance in London, Sir Paul McCartney confirmed for the first time that the song came out of a hitchhiking trip with John Lennon to visit his cousin Betty, who had a pub in the town. It has long been believed that Ryde had been the place with ride in the song. To have confirmation after all these years has been very much welcomed. Mayor Councillor Michael Lilly has said, "It is official. The Beatles' hit song Ticket to Ride is in fact about ride. We now have 2 connections with the Beatles as Ringo Starr was in the movie That'll Be the Day, filmed in Ryde. Any time Paul or indeed Ringo would like to visit Ryde, then they officially will have a standing invitation to come at any time. We will even buy their ticket to get here." Ryde has a really great music tradition, and with our internationally recognised carnivals and Mardi Gras, we are a place that gave a great boogie in. So get your ticket to Ryde. Thank you, Sir Paul, for your confirmation. Great news. If anyone knows which pub that Paul's cousin Betty used to run, then Ryde Town Council would like to know. Email them at reception@rydetowncouncil.gov.uk.
This is Chris, reading an article from On the Wight. Westridge Golf Centre. New plans for further upgrades to the course. Planning approval for work to the front 9 holes has been applied for to improve site safety and upgrade the course. Following delays in the redevelopment of Westridge Golf Centre, the next phase looks set to begin. The popular course on the outskirts of Ryde is currently undergoing an extension, which aims to make it more desirable for golfers of all levels. The reshaping of the two halves of the course would bring them together to significantly improve playability and make it more challenging. Approval was given in 2014 for the rear part of the course to be redesigned, but difficulties with contractors carrying out the work meant it was started but did not progress as quickly as hoped. With new contractors now in place to continue the work, Phase 1 has been completed and most of Phase 2 is set to be done by the end of the year, if the weather holds. Now, planning approval for work to the front 9 holes has been applied for by owner Mark Wright to improve site safety and upgrade the course. The proposals would see a new tee on hole 7 due to safety issues, a new green for the 4th hole, creating a more challenging hole, and an enlarged pond on the 8th hole to make it more visually impressive. If the work is given the green light, plan research, agents on behalf of the developer say various combinations of 9 holes across the site will be available for golfers at all times. To view the plans, you can visit the Council's planning register. Comments can be submitted until the 10th of December. Island Roads has requested more information, deeming it essential evidence the proposed work would not negatively impact the surface water drainage and in turn the highway network.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Plans to turn former Sandown bank into home. A former bank on one of the island's high streets, which was open for close to a century, looks set to become a family home. Prior approval is being sought from the Isle of Wight Council by a Mr. and Mrs. Congleton to change the former Lloyd's Bank on Sandown High Street into a home. Agents for the couple, McCare Associates, said the empty property readily and easily converts into a family home with little alteration apart from the reinstallation of a staircase within the original space. The property has been vacant for over 4 years since Lloyd's closed 49 branches, including those in Bembridge, Cowes and Sandown, as people moved to online banking. Before the branch on Sandown High Street closed, it had been a Lloyd's branch for 98 years. To view the plans, you can visit the Council's planning register. Comments can be submitted until December the 10th.
This is Den reading an article from Island Echo. Duo who stole bag of meat from Asda appear in court. 43-year-old Michael Bunce and 37-year-old Rachel Dixie have appeared in court charged with stealing a bag of meat from Asda supermarket in Newport. Dixie, of Manor Crescent in Newport, pleaded guilty to the theft when she appeared before the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Tuesday. Bunce of Sunset Close in Freshwater also pleaded guilty. Anne Smout, prosecuting, explained to the court that the duo had entered Asda at around 17:30 on the 8th of October and headed to the meat aisle. It's there that they filled a bag with meat worth around £60 and headed towards the checkouts. Dixie is said to have purchased 2 small items but did not pay for the bag full of meat, walking out of the store with Bunce. The duo failed to stop for security and ran from the area. CCTV footage helped identify the pair and the matter was reported to the police. Defending, Oscar Vincent said his client had been led astray by Bunce and that she was deeply sorry for and ashamed of her behaviour. Mr. Vince said that at the time of the offence, Dixie was in a vulnerable state and suffering from mental health issues, including depression and anxiety. Michael Bunce also pleaded guilty to stealing a bag of meat from the same supermarket just 22 hours beforehand. The prosecution told the court that Bunce had entered Asda on the 7th of October at approximately 1900 and stolen a bag of meat, mainly steaks. He walked out of the store without paying but was apprehended by security, who were able to recover the goods worth about £45. The court heard that Bunce appeared in court on the 17th of September charged with theft, for which he received a community order. For Bunce, Barry Arnett said that his client has battled with drugs issues for 20 years but was making tremendous steps forward, but was still suffering from mental health issues, including Asperger's and possibly bipolar. A probation report highlighted that Bunce was engaging well and had recently tested negative for drugs. Magistrates decided to continue Michael Bunce's existing community order, but imposed a curfew on him for a period of 6 weeks, between the hours of 1800 and 6 a.m. He was also ordered to pay £85 costs and £30 compensation alongside a £95 surcharge. Rachel Dixie was given a 12-month conditional discharge and ordered to pay £85 costs, £30 compensation and a £22 surcharge.
Hello, this is an article from the Island Echo read by Sue. Cold snap fuels RSPCA fears for underweight hedgehog survival this winter. This winter could be particularly hard for hedgehogs, as new RSPCA data from England and Wales reveals that the numbers of the iconic creatures admitted to its wildlife centres have already topped 2020 figures. By mid-November this year, the number of hedgehogs taken into care by the animal charities for wildlife centres was 1,896, was already more than the total for the whole of last year, 1,883 in 2020. Every year, the RSPCA receives thousands of calls from the general public reporting their concerns about a hedgehog. In 2020, the animal charity received more than 6,000 calls from people worried about sick, underweight, injured or orphaned hedgehogs. On the Isle of Wight, that number was 4. Hedgehogs born late in the year often do not have enough fat reserves to survive the long winter hibernation without some help. They'll have to forage for longer to find enough food, often during the day, and that's often when they are spotted by concerned animal lovers determined to help them. The decision whether or not to intervene with a hedgehog depends on how much they weigh during early winter and whether they are healthy or not. RSPCA Scientific Officer Evie Button said, "A cold snap can be lethal for underweight hedgehogs, if it means they go into hibernation before they've put on enough weight. If you see a young hoglet that's only about the size of an apple, around 300 grams, they really do need to be rescued and taken to a rehabilitation facility, as they won't have enough fat reserves to last the winter. We fear this may turn out to be a bad year for hedgehogs, as admissions numbers into our centres have already overtaken 2020's. We urge people to visit our website for advice on what to do if they see a sick or injured hog, particularly if it's out and about during the day. The best way to help juvenile hedgehogs depends on how much they weigh. As part of its online hedgehog advice for the public, the RSPCA recommends that if the hoglet weighs less than 300 grams, about the size of an apple, then it will need specialist care to survive the winter. Learn online how to capture and transport the animal to a rehabilitator. The advice to take them to a rehabilitator also applies to hedgehogs of any size which are sick or injured, or seen out during the day during cold snaps. If a juvenile hedgehog weighs between 300 and 500 grams after mid-October, they probably won't have enough weight to see them through the winter, so may also need help. The RSPCA recommends following the BHPS advice for autumn juvenile hedgehogs, which describes how to help them over winter. If the hedgehog weighs over 500 grams and is only seen out at night, it should be healthy enough to hibernate as normal in the wild. They'll be foraging for food overnight, so if you can, keep providing food in the garden, as this will help them to put on even more weight before hibernation. Hedgehogs will often wake up from hibernation and forage for food at least once during winter, so providing food in the garden throughout winter will also help.
This is Chris reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Santas to dash across the Solent with hover travel. The Firefighters Charity and Hover Travel have teamed up to organise the first ever Solent Santa Dash. On Sunday, December the 12th, participants will be invited to dress as Father Christmas or simply wear something suitably seasonal as they run or stroll along the seafronts of Southsea and Ryde. This event takes runners along the esplanade in Southsea, then onto the hovercraft for a 10-minute flight to Ryde, where the second half of the dash is along the beaches of Ryde and Apley. Neil Chapman, Managing Director of Hover Travel, said, "As long-time supporters of the fire services community, we wanted to be actively involved in creating a unique Solent-spanning Santa Dash, and so we donated a hovercraft to fly the participants to the Isle of Wight for the second half of their run. The Firefighters Charity is reliant on donations from the fire and rescue community and the public to meet the cost of operating its centre and community-based services to support thousands of members of the UK's fire and rescue services and their dependents, as well as the retired fire services community each year. The Firefighters Charity offers specialist, lifelong support for members of the UK fire services community, empowering individuals to achieve mental, physical and social well-being throughout their lives." Fiona Macmillan, Community, Corporate and Events Fundraiser at the Firefighters Charity, said, "We're really excited to welcome supporters from across the area for this unique and fun-filled Santa Dash. It's not every day you see a bunch of Santas riding a hovercraft. We couldn't be more grateful to Hover Travel for such a generous donation. All funds raised on the day will go such a long way in helping us to ensure we continue to be there for the entire of the UK's fire services community when they need us most. On behalf of everyone at the Firefighters Charity, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's taking part. We can't wait to see your outfits." The Solent Santa Dash is open to people of all abilities and takes place on Sunday, December the 12th, with the race starting at 10:30 a.m.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Pub company owned by Heineken to transform Casbah into the Ryde Inn. A £340,000 investment is looking to bring back a once popular Ryde hotspot with a new look and a new name. The Casbah on Union Street is in for a facelift after sitting empty for nearly 2 years as new owners, Stars, Pubs and Bars come in and make changes. Most notably, the landlords are renaming the establishment the Ryde Inn and removing the slightly jarring previous signs and decorations. Plans have been unveiled in a planning application to the Isle of Wight Council for changes to signs on the building. Planning documents say the design of the building would sit comfortably in its surroundings on Union Street and enhance the prominent building, making it less obtrusive with traditional muted colours. It's not just external, but internal redecorations, with stars, pubs and bars saying the property is set to receive £340,000 overall investment, with a complete overhaul throughout and new furniture. The Edinburgh-based company is the pub business of beer brand Heineken. It buys pubs, makes improvements, and then rents the pub to tenants. On its website, the Ride Inn is available to rent for £53,493 a year.
This is Den reading an article from Island Echo. Young Enterprise is back for 2021 with 9 school teams taking part in Business Challenge. This academic year's Young Enterprise Company programme is underway and involves 9 school or college teams across the Isle of Wight. The programme is managed by Island Social Enterprise EdWise, which improves life chances and opportunities for young people, and is sponsored by Hose Rhodes Dixon. Young Enterprise is designed to help students to get a taste of the real business world through forming a team with individual roles and responsibilities, and then developing and launching a real product or service. Each team is supported by a proven business advisor who helps the team to steer through choppy waters as the business launches and takes off. In recent years, the programme has been very successful on the island, inspiring students to join or start up businesses and to show their innovation. The first hurdle that the teams needed to navigate over is a Dragon's Den event on Tuesday the 30th of November, involving a panel of leading island business people. There are real cash rewards at stake for the team making the best pitches for financial investment. Head Dragon, Jamie Busby from Hose Rhodes Dixon, explains why the company programme is so popular with schools, students and business people. Over the years, we have seen many students inspired by this true business experience as they create, launch and sell products. It's great to see students blossom through the trading experience. To watch the progress of Island school teams this year or to learn more, visit www.ed-wise.org.
Hello, this is an article from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Sue. Luxury resort planned for East Cowes, Norris Castle. Grand plans to restore landmark Norris Castle in East Cowes have been revealed. In a public notice, the owners of the Grade 1 and 2 listed buildings have set out plans for the site, as well as next door's Springfield estate. They ask any landowner or tenant to come forward in 21 days, but listed the extensive work proposed to turn the dilapidated buildings into a luxury resort and housing. It is envisaged the Grade 1 listed castle, which Queen Victoria used to visit as a child, will be restored and converted into a luxury hotel with 2 linked buildings built to provide a swimming pool, additional hotel rooms as well as services and amenities. The nearby Grade 1 Norris Castle farm, bailiff's house, cottage and walled kitchen garden would be converted into a spa and wellness centre, providing treatment rooms, spa residences, a restaurant and cafe. It is being proposed homes will be built outside of the estate boundary on the southwest field, as well as an access road through the Spring Hill estate to provide a new entrance. On the Grade 2 listed sea wall, which would be repaired and restored to stabilise the land, 4 seafront buildings will be constructed for resort apartments. The Grade 2 bathing house ruin will be restored into a restaurant. Along the waterfront, more resort residences, a boathouse and slipway are proposed. The Grade 2 pump house will be restored and converted into a clubhouse. The 4 Grade 2 stone watering ponds will be restored, as well as a Grade 1 park and garden to preserve the grotto. The Grade 2 cattle shelters would provide a resort residence, gatehouse and security building. An outline application will also be submitted for a 55-unit senior living scheme with associated communal facilities across parts of the Spring Hill estate and farm, retaining and converting existing buildings. Ideas for the site have taken a while to come forward, with no official planning application yet submitted to the Isle of Wight Council, although the Norris Castle Estate Group hinted it could be sometime this month. Multiple consultations were undertaken by the developers while the plans were drawn up, which the group hope will be reflected.
This is Chris reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. We've tried so hard. Newport's Phil's Diner announces closure. The owners of Newport's popular Phil's Diner have announced they are closing for good. The restaurant on the High Street is blaming the devastating effect of COVID-19 and rising food costs. Posting on its Facebook page, the original Phil's Diner said, "It is with much regret that we have decided to close the diner for good today. We've tried so hard to keep going, but no one could have predicted the devastating effect that COVID and rising food costs have had on so many businesses. We would like to take this opportunity to thank all our valued customers, some of whom have become friends. We have had a brilliant time being part of the local business community, and we wish everyone the very best of luck in the future."
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Man stole alcohol to pay off drug debt after children threatened. A man who stole £800 of alcohol from 3 supermarkets to pay off a drug debt after his children were threatened has appeared in court. 45-year-old Darren Stride, of no fixed abode, appeared at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court on Tuesday, charged with 11 counts of theft from a shop and 1 count of going equipped. The court heard from the prosecution that Stride had stolen £460 of alcohol from Tesco in Ryde, £259 worth from Morrison's in Lake, and £80 worth from Sainsbury's in Newport on dates between September and November this year. He was eventually caught outside Morrison's in Newport and was found to be carrying pliers which he used to cut off security tags in each store. It was revealed before magistrates that Stride had stolen the alcohol not for his own consumption, but to sell on to pay off a £4,000 drug debt owed to 4 or 5 different dealers. Defending, Barry Arnott said his client previously sold tools and a car in a bid to clear his drug debt, which is built up from taking amphetamines on tick. Once the money had dried up, threats were made to his 3 teenage children, with suggestions from the dealers that Stride should steal to make money. A pre-sentence report from probation highlighted that Darren Stride is now clear of drugs and is starting a new job as a chef on Friday. They noted 21 previous offences and that Stride had last been in court in 2016. Magistrates handed Stride a 12-month community order with 15 rehabilitation days, 130 hours of unpaid work, and ordered him to pay compensation to the tune of £799, as well as £85 costs and a £95 surcharge.
This is Den reading an article from On the Wight. "I'm dreading Isle of Wight Festival's return," says owner of Newport Harbour roller skating business. At a time where every penny counted, the owner of Skates said they were trying to build up customer confidence, but a lack of communication from the festival has left him dreading its return. After a year trying to survive COVID, the island's roller disco rink owner has spoken about the troubles it faced when the festival rolled into town. Based in a building at Newport Harbour, Skates took a hit when the Isle of Wight Festival staged the delayed event in September. Skates was only 4 months old when the pandemic hit and halted everything, including postponing the iconic Sea Close event. At a difficult time where every penny counted, Mark Rooney, owner of Skates, said they were trying to build up customer confidence, but a lack of communication from the festival has left him dreading the festival's return. He said, "The festival is a behemoth freight train version of what I am, my little business, but we have the same problems." Mark said he tried to contact the festival to sort out the issues, including going to help from the Isle of Wight Council's harbour master, Jonathan Brand, but he had no festival contact to turn to. However, a festival spokesperson said they wanted to work with Mark to ensure better communications next year. They had tighter security this year due to COVID restrictions. One morning, Mark found nearly 15 containers parked in front of the building. When he went up to the festival site office and says he was sent away and told someone would come and see him, but they never did. Mark said he was fully expecting to be open over the majority of the festival, but was told at the last minute people would not be able to access the building, so had to cancel sessions and stop staff coming in. Those that did manage to get through, however, were coming in frustrated as security guards were holding them up and questioning them. If there had been dialogue beforehand, Mark said this could have been avoided. An Isle of Wight festival spokesperson, however, said they spoke to Mark about the affected classes and offered to let patrons enter the area on foot. It was agreed at the time, but a decision was later made to close. Mark said, "It is a difficult situation. In previous years, there have only been small firms here. It was never going to be a problem. Now it is a bit more demanding, but if we had a conversation, we could have sorted this. I have to find a certain amount a month to pay the bills, but that was taken away from me. It made it difficult. Another year I might have been able to brunt it, but it was tough. I am aware it is going to come next year, but what do I do? Do I write business off for that period?" The festival spokesperson said they were keen to work with Skates to allow access, and the management team would be in touch to work things out for 2022 and beyond. The security has also been criticised by Isle of Wight councillors, with Councillor Matthew Price saying at a Harbour Committee meeting the way they restricted residents was not acceptable. Councillor Price said a lot of things had changed from the way the harbour was controlled in previous years, and things needed to go back to the way they were. The festival spokesperson also said the health, safety and security operation was more robust than previous years due to strict COVID management plans.
This is an article from Island Echo read by Sue. Beta Pack on the road to going all electric by 2024. Rookley-based Beta Pack has recently taken delivery of a brand new electric van as part of a commitment to transition their fleet of delivery vehicles from diesel to all electric within 3 years. The new van is the latest e-dispatch from Citroën, with an extra long wheelbase, 6 doors and 3 seats, plus 0 tailpipe emissions, with a range of over 200 miles on a single charge. The new vehicle is capable of making deliveries on the mainland with no need to recharge after leaving the island. Beta Pack takes caring for the environment seriously, so has already eliminated heating oil use at their offices and warehouse complex, and has invested in 77 solar panels, producing up to 10 kilowatts of electricity in a day, enough to meet the needs of the business with any surplus going back into the national grid. But it doesn't end there. John Carter, Managing Director, comments, Over 25% of what we do is packaging, and we are working closely with business to use more sustainable, eco and biodegradable packaging, helping our customers to be more environmentally conscious. We have even changed the plastic lids on our instant coffee jars to tin so that these can be reused and recycled. Another small step that helps to make big changes. The new vehicle was provided by electric vehicle specialists, Vehicle Consulting Solent based in Cowes. Paul Thorley, director, has said, "It's great to see a local business that has such a strong focus on the environment and is committed to move their delivery fleet from diesel to electric. The range on new vehicles such as this allowing them to manage deliveries and expand their service to businesses on the mainland as well as across the island in an environmentally and sustainable way."
Hello, this is Madeline.
And this is Pauline.
And before we start the second part of the County Press, here is this week's society news. Our Christmas fair at Millbrook House is today, Saturday the 27th of November, between 10:30 and 12:30. We will have a variety of stalls and refreshments on offer, so it is a chance for you to empty out your drawers of any items you think would be suitable to sell and kindly donate to us for this event. As always, we are very happy to accept any donations of items suitable either to sell or use as raffle prizes. Please note there is no parking at Millbrook House, only drop-off. Parking is available at Carisbrook Primary, Wellington Road, Newport. The swimming group at Medina is every Monday at Medina Leisure Centre at 1:30pm until 2:30pm. The group have exclusive use of the pool and are looking for new members, so if you are interested in joining, please call the office for more details. The cost is £5 for swimming. Transport is available if requested. Please call the office for more details. Our yarn at Millbrook is on Monday starting at 10am. This group enjoys chatting and carrying out projects involving yarn. Everyone is very welcome to join. The cost is £1 for coffee and biscuits.
Coffee and Chat is on every Wednesday at Millbrook House from 10am until 11:30, and it is only £1 to include the cake and coffee. Come along and spend time with members and staff discussing various topics, etc. On Thursday, our Mix and Mingle group will meet at Millbrook House, normal start 10:30am. If you'd like to join the group in the new year, please call the office for more details. Our annual Story Writing Award ceremony is on December the 6th at the Riverside Centre, starting at 7pm. Doors open at 6:30, all welcome to come along for festive entertainment and to congratulate our award winners. Please call the office to book on 522205. Our entertainment for the evening is Huxley Magician, Ben Stubbs, Double Take, and our compere for the evening will be our fabulous volunteer Morris, who hopefully will sing a few songs for us as well.
And now moving on to the second part of the County Press for this week, starting with some letters. Southern Vectors should consider workers' views, from R. Tapster in Ryde. I agree with Andrew Wickham, MD for Southern Vectors, that buses would be an excellent solution to reduce the congestion and pollution on the island. However, the reported proposals for the bus service improvement plans lack any market research to establish the shift patterns at the major employers or the bus routes that would suit their employees. The current bus service simply doesn't meet the needs of those who travel regularly to work. As someone who lived in Ventnor and worked at St Mary's Hospital for 7 years, I can attest that there is no bus service that would get you from Ventnor to a shift starting at 7am at St Mary's. And after a 14-hour shift, the Cowes bus, which used to pick me up from the hospital, usually missed the Ventnor connection at Newport bus station, and I had to wait an extra hour for the next one, increasing my journey time to 2 hours. And the cost of the tickets was unjustifiable. The reality is that Southern Vectis fails to ensure that there are buses to get people to work. And as long as people can't get to work by bus, they will be forced to keep a personal car. No amount of punitive measures, parking charges and fuel prices will change that. If they met the needs of those who travel to work, then Southern Vectis would have enough paying customers to subsidise some of the less profitable routes. Southern Vectis should approach all employees from HMP Isle of Wight, St Mary's Hospital, all the major supermarkets, BAE and other manufacturers to establish their transport needs. But Southern Vectis has a monopoly on the island, therefore no interest in making the ticket prices competitive. Instead, they threaten to cancel essential services in rural areas to extort council subsidies. Moreover, there has to be more frequent bus service to and fro from the hospital site when the peak clinic and visiting activities take place. Also, for those who are frail and unable to manage the distance, buses need to stop closer to the main doors. In conclusion, as long as Southern Vectis fails to meet the needs of the regular commuters, the majority of working-age residents will be forced to use personal cars, regardless of the punitive measures introduced. It is high time they investigate and address this issue in the interest of a profitable and sustainable bus service.
Solent Bridge proposal would be a non-starter, and we have two views here. The first one is Melvin Hurst of Ventnor. As a structural engineer, I find Diana Noyce's suggestion in the County Press of 9/12/21 of a bridge to connect the island to the mainland technically exciting, but it doesn't take long to work out that this is a non-starter. The Skye Bridge in Scotland, completed in 1996, is about 2.5 kilometres long, including approach spans, and cost approximately £25 million. Looking at a map of the coastline either side of the Solent, quite apart from any considerations of shipping lane access or space to accommodate the approach roads on either shore, and ignoring environmental considerations, any bridge crossing the Solent would be of the order of at least 5 kilometres long. Taking the pro rata length increase and inflation since the 90s into account, the approximate cost of such a bridge would be in excess of £110 million. Such a sum could only come from the national budget, not the Isle of Wight councils. However, given the current wrangles over funding for all sorts of important causes, it is difficult to see such a bridge coming high on any list of national priorities. We're the wrong end of the country for levelling up. And Robert Packham of East Cowes says, in 2012 I attended an East Cowes Town Council meeting as a member of the public before being a councillor, and at that meeting 3 students from Southampton University gave a presentation on having a bridge across the Medina. They said you cannot build a fixed bridge where the floating bridge runs because the land is too low and the yachts with tall masts would not get underneath it. And I agree. If you want a fixed bridge, it would have to be further down the Medina at the point of Saunders Way and would cost £17 million. About 20 years ago, a fixed bridge was going to be built there, but the government pulled out of giving money to the Isle of Wight Council. The road at Saunders Way is wider to take more traffic to the bridge.
And this is a short poem from Rod Jones in Newport. Is Newport losing status? Newport, the island's county town, is gradually shutting down. No post office, and now, I hear, no doctor anywhere that's near. Perhaps it's time to swallow pride and move the county town to Ryde.
Unbelievable, says Keith Hook of Wootton. I feel I must write in support of Councillor Joe Robertson, who has incurred the wrath of the council leader, Laura P.C. Wilcox. Councillor Robertson was criticised for political point scoring. Surely answering your emails is part of the job of the council leader, so to admit these are not being read is unbelievable. How many other emails lay languishing in Councillor P.C. Wilcox's inbox? But perhaps some of these vulnerable people had emailed her and are awaiting a reply.
Join us for DIP to protest against sewage, from Maria Villavine, Newport. My thanks to a number of campaigners, MPs and surfers against sewage, relentlessly campaigning for the amendment to the Environment Bill to ensure the Environment Act would benefit from key improvements for laws on sewage pollution, plastic pollution and ocean recovery. Thanks to the tireless campaigns from people, there is now more of an emphasis on water companies providing information to the public on issues such as any time that a sewer overflow discharges, so that anyone wanting to enjoy seas and rivers can now make an informed choice to do so. Water companies also will have to monitor and report on the impact of sewage discharges on water quality, which in turn will provide the public with information on which companies are the worst polluters and provide us with an opportunity to apply public pressure on them. The government must make a plan to tackle sewage pollution and present this to Parliament by September 2022, and has placed a legal duty on water companies to progressively reduce the adverse impact of discharges from storm overflows. The public must remain vigilant and observe that these plans all come to light accordingly. There will be a family-friendly gathering of all sea lovers against sewage pollution, with a firm emphasis holding water companies accountable tomorrow, that's Saturday, at 10 o'clock at Yaverland. Come along and wear costumes, bring banners and enjoy a dip if you dare. Please be aware that the sea is very cold at this time of year, so it is important that swimmers who dip are experienced and acclimatised to the sea. You enter at your own risk.
We need an MP with backbone to fight cuts, says Ryan Hayes of Bembridge. Cuts in GP services, cuts in hospital nurses, cuts in hospital doctors, cuts in hospital beds, etc., etc., along with an overall lack of funding nationally for our NHS, can be charted back throughout the past decade of Conservative austerity. Indeed, unacceptably long waiting lists for treatment, along with continuous A&E winter pressures, existed way before any pandemic. The truth is the UK spends less per head of GDP on healthcare than any other major European country. Well, we know how this government works from the recent revelations of Tory sleaze. Rather than addressing a problem, it instead seeks to change the rules. The Health and Care Bill will dumb down current standards since there isn't the political will to maintain or indeed raise them. Timely medical treatment will increasingly become the privilege of those who are in the fortunate position to be able to pay for it privately. Indeed, that's already the case. The rest of the electorate can whistle. Our island desperately needs an MP of genuine moral substance with the conviction to do the right thing for constituents, but I increasingly wonder if this fits with the values of the present incumbent. I guess we will find out when the bill comes before Parliament. The editor's footnote. Mr. Seeley told the county press he voted with the government but reminded the minister about unavoidably small hospitals, of which the island is deemed the most remote.
And this is the letter of the week from Dr. Gabrielle Freischer. She's a retired GP from Horringford. Simple message will keep us all COVID safe. The public health message ought to be, you are likely to catch COVID, same as the common cold. The question is not if, but when. Even if you had COVID, you can get it again, same as the common cold. You are unlikely to get severely ill and need hospital admission if you are fully vaccinated. More people vaccinated means lower risk of the virus spreading, less hospital admissions, less pressure on the NHS, and less risk of new variants emerging. A vaccine passport does not mean you cannot have the virus or infect others. It just means access to nightclubs and other venues. If you wear a face mask correctly, you are less likely to pass the virus on to others. Wash your hands frequently, maintain social distancing where possible, and, when necessary in crowded places, wear a face mask covering mouth and nose. People aren't stupid and will behave responsibly if given all the facts.
And this is a letter from Richard Ferraro, who's a Fellow of the Royal Institute of British Architects, and he lives in Bonchurch. I bow to Phil Jelly's helpful knowledge about running times on the Island Line. However, the simple truth is that £26 million has been spent on a fleet of 5 new trains and substantial upgrades of infrastructure, including a new passing loop. Prior to this, we had 2 trains per hour in each direction. Now we have 1 train per hour in each direction. The £26 million was invested to improve train services, not cut them. The operator, South Western Railway, SWR, has had a year to sort out timetabling and worked with Wight to provide efficient, joined-up public transport. In the age of steam, up to 45 trains a day ran in each direction between Ryde and Ventnor. That is 90 trains a day through Ventnor Tunnel. Those trains had 6 coaches. By comparison, 2 electric trains an hour in both directions, with 2 coaches each, is not exactly demanding. A service of 3 trains an hour in both directions is achievable and very desirable. Of significance, our upgraded all-electric railway is sustainable with low or zero carbon emissions. In the wake of COP26, increased use is essential. Obviously, in the current context of rail improvements across England, new trains must not stand idle. Therefore, on behalf of Isle of Wight residents, I respectfully request that SWR publishes its proposals for train services in these pages for public comment. Needless to say, their proposals must be compatible with the published business case prepared by experts to support the bid for extensions to the Island Line, as submitted by Isle of Wight Council to central government.
From Peter Russell in Freshwater, Boris simply hasn't a clue. The idealists in the Labour Party would have loved to have seen the banning of outside incomes for MPs for decades, but stood no chance of persuading even their own MPs to accept that. Johnson has single-handedly manipulated events and public opinion so as to ensure that MPs on both sides of the aisle have little choice but to curtail their avarice. I would love to believe that Johnson is a left-wing subversive who has penetrated the Tories and executed a cunning plan. However, I think it is more likely that he is a bumbling buffoon who didn't have a clue what he was doing.
This is a letter from Paul Knocker of Bembridge. Tim Bristow, County Press 12/11/21, has raised an important issue about the scale of emissions and pollutions as a result of the huge growth in the production and use of computers, tablets, smartphones and the internet. I also followed the COP26 agenda and found no mention of this problem. Perhaps I can follow this up with a few interesting facts about our commitment to renewable energy. COP26 had an official energy provider, the Griffin Wind Farm in Perthshire, operated by SSE. The trouble was that for much of the conference it was not paid to generate electricity. Instead, SSE was paid £500,000 in constraint payments, given to owners of wind farms when the wind is too strong and they are generating more electricity than the grid can handle. According to the Renewable Energy Foundation, 3.7 TWh of wind energy in 2020, enough to power every home in Wales for the year, was wasted for the same reason. Wind farm owners were paid a total of £274 million in constraint payments, and this was added as a stealth tax to consumer bills. These payments expose one of the problems of intermittent supply and a huge hole in Britain's renewable policy. We have little means of storing the electricity when the wind is blowing and the sun is shining.
From Richard Hollis in Cowes, practice what you preach, councillor. At the Isle of Wight Council meeting last week, Peter Spink, Conservative councillor for Freshwater North and Yarmouth, who suggested the Isle of Wight Council should take more control over the housing being built on the island to ensure it addresses real need. Councillor Quigley, Labour councillor for Cowes North, retorted that Councillor Spink's proposal amounted to a NIMBY's charter. To those who are unfamiliar with the term, NIMBY stands for Not in My Backyard. Perhaps Councillor Spink had touched a nerve with Councillor Quigley, who in 2014 bought one of the largest houses in Gurnard, which had a very large garden, to which he then added another plot, ensuring he has a comfortable buffer zone between his garden and the adjacent land off nearby Place Road, the site of a large housing development. Perhaps Councillor Quigley should now step up and abide by his proclaimed Corbynist principles and make part of his large garden available for the construction of affordable housing. This would surely ensure he is not guilty of the very same NIMBYism of which he accused others.
J. Domini of Ventnor. After attending a meeting on November the 19th with PTEC and its representative, residents still have grave concerns regarding the siting of the proposed transformer compound inside the southern water site adjacent to Flowerbrook's public space. It was confirmed to the residents that the noise assessment was based on a similar 20 MW transformer, not the 30 MW as per the application. Our MP was informed there would be 9 floating orbital O2 tidal turbines, 74 metres in length, off the coast at St Catherine's Point. PTEC's original estimated costs were approximately £130 million, and it has been revised downwards to £70 million. One must ask the question if this was ever a viable project. On the Isle of Wight Council Planning website, there was a letter dated November the 3rd from TF Property Solutions on behalf of Red Squirrel Limited, over whose land the access is required. It states unequivocally that PTEC has no right over their property or to modify the entrance to their land. They have no intention of granting PTEC such rights and have made the position very clear to PTEC. With no permission to access the proposed substation site, one wonders why PTEC is still pursuing its planning application. With no backup access plans, this project appears to be dead in the water. A new investor would certainly carry out due diligence before committing a great deal of money to this untested demonstration tidal project. The last accounts on the Company's House website shows PTEC is in debt for approximately £2.4 million. This raises the question, how is the Isle of Wight Council going to recover its £1 million loan from a company that has no assets and no access to the site?
From Nick Wilde in Freshwater. More matinee shows, please. Last Wednesday, my wife and I saw the Black Box Theatre Company perform Abigail's Party by Mike Lee at Key Arts. This was followed by an evening sellout performance. This was an excellent production by a Hampshire-based professional company. These matinee performances have advantages to those of us who are getting on a bit, do not have a car and rely on public transport. Living in Freshwater as we do, more matinee performances in Newport would be much appreciated and would avoid the likelihood of a long wait at the bus station, followed by a dark walk home. I'm sure local drama groups would also benefit from reaching a wider audience if they did this too, perhaps on a Saturday afternoon.
And finally, Sam Turner of Sandown has a comment on electric cars. The knee-jerk reaction in the name of climate change. Petrol engines can last for well over 50 years and more and are easily recyclable. Batteries from electric cars have a finite lifespan and cannot easily be recycled, if at all, due to the nature of their manufacture and chemicals within the battery. Also, scientists are saying that a battery-driven car will have to do at least 70,000 miles to achieve its clean for the environment status. This is due to the unclean means of battery manufacture. Remember here that oil for petrol cars is brought from deep below the Earth's surface, and the rare metals and elements for batteries sits on or just below the Earth's surface. So the planet's surface crust will be destroyed in the hunt for the rare metals and elements used in the batteries.
And now moving on to some Wight memories. The Rocket Genius Frozen in Time by Anne Grant. The resurgence of interest in the Isle of Wight Black Arrow rocket programme gives an opportunity to recognise the genius of inventor Paul Henry Layton. Paul was born in Leeds in 1914. As a small boy, his family moved to Ventnor. A neighbour was Nancy Crinage, who became his wife in 1939. Just before marriage, Nancy carved her own niche in Isle of Wight history when she became the first island woman to gain a flying licence. Layton joined Austin Motors in 1931 as an apprentice. During the Second World War, he served in the RAF and Royal Navy Air Branch, a commander distinguished with a DSC. In 1948, he bought a double-decker bus and converted it into a mobile home where they lived for 5 years with their sons. He equipped it with an Aga for cooking, heating and hot water, unconventional enough to feature in the picture post. His wartime experience led to positions with engineering companies. In 1956, Saunders Roe recruited Layton for the Black Knight project as Chief Rocket Development Engineer. Black Knight was the launcher engine section of the Black Arrow satellite head. It was Britain's first rocket programme. As well as the design and build of the launcher, Paul planned and implemented the building of the testing station at the Needles Headland. This was a mammoth, earth-moving task. Lorry loads of chalk removal from the cliff edge kept many men employed in the remodelling of the cliff face. Test firings of Black Knight led to modifications until the design was perfected. The next stage was to relocate to Australia. The rocket was transported by aircraft, which departed from Bembridge, and the photos of the Needles rocket programme are from Image Films. At Woomera, Australia, Black Arrow captured British headlines in 1958. It was hailed as a huge success, not least because it was done on a budget of only £5 million. It was the first rocket of any nation to operate successfully on its first launch. Layton wanted to press ahead and held realistic ambitions for a British orbital rocket. The government was less eager to continue. Frustrated by politicians, Paul resigned in 1959. Saunders Roe and Britain's space industry lost a man who was once described as one of those rare, remarkable Englishmen who are slightly eccentric without realising it and who have a versatility close to genius. He joined Black & Decker Power Tools Company as engineering director. Typical of Paul's restless nature, in 1961 he took a complete change of direction when he and Nancy bought a run-down country pub restaurant in Somerset. With no catering experience, the couple soon turned around the Miners' Arms. It was voted one of the most interesting restaurants and featured in the Good Food Guide and Egon Ronay Guide. Layton turned gastronomic heads with his creation of a snail sauce, unheard of in Britain at the time. Stretching credulity, he used the engineering brain to design an electric fence to keep 100,000 snails in a disused swimming pool, his snail farm. Then he introduced the freezing of prepared snails and other complete dishes. This led to considerable debate. Egon Ronay wrote in the Times to express his doubt, although he acknowledged that Mr. Layton is a unique exception because of his scientific background and his individual perfectionist attention to the process of cooking and freezing. Next, Paul developed an insulated container to keep frozen food for days. Then he patented the Layton temp stick. It indicated if food ever exceeded a safer temperature. The two inventions allowed him an early entry into the food mail order business.
In 1973, Paul started to brew his own ale, and the Miners' Arms became the smallest licensed brewery in the UK. The pub's growing reputation grew a glittering clientele, including Egon Ronay, Delia Smith, Terry Wogan, Kate Adie, Malcolm McDowell, Anthony Hopkins and the Marquis of Bath. Leighton appeared on radio as a snail expert, including a BBC broadcast about him, a man of independent mind. He sold up, aged 63, and returned to the island a year later. Leighton's adventure was not over yet. He bought a cottage overlooking the channel. It had no mains water, electricity, gas or drainage. The rocket genius designed and built a series of windmills to recharge a bank of batteries that provided the only means of power in the house. A local councillor for some years, Paul spent much time studying, analysing and reporting on the rapid erosion of areas of the island's southwest coast. With a lifelong passion for writing poetry and piano music, his Lion Song, written for the Marquis of Bath, is stored in the old library at Longleat. Leighton also helped in the initial design of fencing at Longleat when the Lions first arrived. In 1990, Nancy was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. They sold their cottage and returned to Ventnor, where they had first met 70 years earlier. Nancy passed away in 1993. Paul died 5 years later. Leighton's name should surely rank alongside eminent Isle of Wight scientists Milne, Hooke and Harcourt.
And now we have My View by Alan Marriott. So why do we make this sporting life so hard? Last month, I, along with 10 other slightly less corpulent and certainly more fit men of a certain age, hauled ourselves over to New Milton to take part in the comedy spectacle that is veterans football. The fact we were heavily beaten by a team with a considerably smaller combined age is not really the point of these occasions. We convinced ourselves we were hard done by. The ref got the decisions wrong, and the goals we did score became Kevin De Bruyne-esque by the time we were on the fourth post-match pint. The fact is, we were out there doing it, as tens of thousands of footballers, cricketers, rugby players, hockey teams and individual athletes are every weekend. Standards vary greatly between our own circus-style performance and the talented sports people who are on the way to better things in their athletic careers. But what we all have in common is the need for a space to strut our stuff. A recreation ground, a sports centre, a netball court or a 3G hockey pitch. New Milton's small town recreation ground was a bit of a revelation. The town's football team were taking on our own Newport that day in their own stadium adjoining the recreational pitches. There were also very decent changing facilities with good showers, a first aid room and parking area, which got me to thinking about the recent Seaclose debacle. Councillor Matt Price's idea for Newport FC to join to the town recreation ground on an artificial pitch, available for public hire and with its own changing facilities and floodlights, seemed a minor stroke of genius. What was not to like?
Junior teams, women's teams, disability teams could all have shared this central facility, with the recreational pitches and netball courts coexisting happily and benefiting from better changing rooms, which could have attracted central funding and moved a step up from the tired and battered portable buildings currently used. But apparently it was all too difficult. So Newport FC face a future at a site a good couple of miles from town, 3 or 4 if you live in Carisbrooke or Gunville, at the racecourse roundabout. I wish them well, and the community use is still assured, although God help if you don't have a car. But with football attendances dwindling anyway, I'm not sure Bert and Joe will still be making the effort on a wet November Wednesday night to go and cheer on the team. No one has adequately explained why one of the island's major sporting facilities can't be used for sport. Another example of this sporting malaise is with indoor cricket. This year, around 17 teams signalled interest in taking part, but finding a venue has been a nightmare, with only the Island Free Schools Rue Valley Sports Centre available, and then with certain caveats. It's great that cricket is getting the game on, but the reluctance of schools to make their sports halls available for community use is nothing short of disgraceful, particularly when, in some cases, those facilities were paid for by Sport England with that usage in mind. The tabloids, politicians and health bosses bang on about the obesity crisis, but what can we expect when we make it so difficult for people, young and old, to enjoy sport in surroundings fit for human consumption?
And now from Bob Seeley, our MP for the Isle of Wight. Here's how I would tackle all allegations of sleaze. Sleaze has reared its ugly head again. Rather than avoid it, I will, in my normal style, address it head on. First, I do not, nor have not had, a second job while being your MP. Second, I believe MPs should be banned from paid consultancy. It is a glaring conflict of interest. I support the government's plans. Third, Boris Johnson should not have defended Owen Paterson. I defied government orders and did not support it. The report into him was fair. Standard's chairman, Labour MP Chris Bryant, defended it well. He was so much more effective than, sadly, the many partisan Labour MPs baying for blood while being unaware of their own party's poor record. However, I don't think it inherently wrong for an MP to have outside interests. Doctors and nurses sit as MPs for all sides. Sometimes they do part-time work, good. Some lawyers also continue to practice, and that includes Labour leader Keir Starmer, who has earned over £100,000 extra. Boris was a newspaper columnist whilst an MP. Do we ban MPs from writing articles and books? Members of the Armed Forces Reserve will sometimes train. I am in the reserve. I have done 4 days' service since 2017, unpaid. However, being an MP is a privilege. If MPs have second jobs or outside interests, these must be secondary. MPs must show judgment. In relation to scandal, since 2011, one Tory MP has been imprisoned, while several have resigned under a cloud. More Tories than Labour have second jobs. Several Tory lords also went to prison in the expenses scandal. In the same period, 7 Labour MPs, 1 appealing, have been given jail sentences, 1 every 500 days or so. Several others have resigned under sexual harassment or drug allegations. The Labour Party was found responsible for unlawful acts of harassment and discrimination during its anti-Semitism scandal. So problems exist on both sides, but one should not overstate. The UK political system remains, according to anti-corruption experts Transparency International, one of the world's least corrupt. What we need is additional reform to keep it clean. I would ban paid lobbying immediately. I would also look at major reform of the laxed area of foreign lobbying, but that's an article for another time. As your MP, my only priority will always be to islanders and to the island. I wish you all a good weekend.
And now we turn to entertainment on the Isle of Wight. After a long absence, a popular group of entertainers, the Elderberries, are staging another Sounds of the 60s show. The event will take place at Freshwater Memorial Hall on Saturday, December the 4th at 7:30 p.m. A varied selection of 1960s hits, along with a taste of Christmas, are to be performed by the usual lineup, consisting of Bob Everson, Dorothy Green, Mark Handel, Janet Hare, Steve French and Phil Edwards, with Toby Elliott on drums and percussion. Also appearing will be guest artiste Bertie Everson. Tickets are available at £8 from Bob and Pam Everson on 07778 565 767, and the proceeds will go to IWPCSA towards another PSA testing session in the West Wight and to other local cancer charities.
And find island-made festive gifts at the Key Arts event. The annual Christmas Cracker Weekend will be hosted by Key Arts, starting on Saturday. Key Arts hosts its annual Christmas Cracker Weekend, featuring more than 25 craftspeople. The event provides a unique opportunity to shop for handcrafted, unusual and thoughtful gifts, all under one roof. There is everything from wood, glass, felt and fabric, to mosaic and needlepoint kits, prints, jewellery, pottery and illustration. Entry is free. On each day, the event will be open from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m, with stalls throughout the building. The craft shop will be open as well, with even more Christmas cards, crafts and decorations to choose from.
Work begins on new £5 million primary school. Work on a new £5 million primary school in the West Wight is about to begin. The Isle of Wight Council says the new school will provide modern educational facilities on the site of the former All Saints CE Primary School off School Green Road, Freshwater, which closed last year. The multi-million-pound development will provide a new home for Yarmouth CE Primary School and Little Stars Preschool, with capacity for around 210 pupils. The estimated completion date is early 2023. The project is being jointly funded by the Council and the Department for Education, and the new building has been designed by Hampshire County Council Property Services.
Midwives on march in Ryde. Midwives on the Isle of Wight marched with others from around the country at the weekend to draw attention to what they say is growing funding and staffing crisis. They want the government to step in to protect women and babies at the most vulnerable times in their lives and those that deliver their vital care. A UK-wide petition has already collected more than 104,000 signatures. Wives say childbirth has become critically unsafe and gather to ask for more funding, more training, fewer pressures, and to call on the government to listen to their concerns. They have been highlighting a disproportionate likelihood of death for women who are black and Asian. More than 70 gatherings took place around the country, and around 50 people joined the Isle of Wight's vigil, including leader of the Isle of Wight Council, Councillor Laura P.C. Wilcox. Heather Wilkins, Isle of Wight doula and hypnobirthing practitioner, said, "Despite in freezing weather conditions and onshore breeze, we welcomed island midwives, retired midwives, parents and their babies, interested members of the public and Isle of Wight birth workers." Councillor Michael Lilly, Mayor of Ryde, and Councillor Jenna Sabine, Deputy Mayor of Ryde, also attended.
Don't go to the mainland for booster jabs. The message for islanders trying to get a COVID-19 booster is not to book an appointment on the mainland, as confusion reigns about how we can access the jabs. The message has been issued in a week in which the deaths of 3 more islanders were reported, bringing this to 341. The Clinical Commissioning Group insists there is both capacity and supply for islanders trying to get their 3rd jab. It said GPs will contact eligible islanders and travel across the Solent was not necessary. However, many told the county press are only being offered mainland appointments through the NHS booking system. And one Portsmouth resident told the county press she was offered a slot at Newport's Riverside Centre. Parts of Europe have entered a new lockdown this week, and the government's vaccine minister has advised us to get a booster jab as soon as possible. December the 11th has been named by the Department of Health and Social Care as the deadline to ensure high protection in time for Christmas. Currently eligible for booster jabs 6 months after the 2nd jab are those aged 40 and over, those aged 16 and over and who have had a health condition that puts them at risk, and frontline health and social care workers. Madeline Reeder told us on Facebook while she was able to book a booster via her GP, her partner was offered a mainland appointment. When Madeline attended her appointment at Westridge, her partner joined a queue for walk-ins and they were both out within half an hour. Jackie Scales booked a booster online at the Riverside Centre, but her husband could only get a mainland appointment. She said he called 119 to report the error and they couldn't help. He rang the surgery and they got him an appointment. Others have told us walk-ins were possible at Westridge, while a West Wight resident said she was told by a chibi to call back in the new year. The CCG said there had been an overwhelming response and it understood the frustration.
Blaze destroys old scout hut. Fire completely destroyed the old scout hut on the Broadway Totland on Sunday evening. 5 fire crews were called at 7:38 p.m. after flames could be seen coming from the disused hut. On arrival, the entire building was well alight and engulfed in flames, and given its wood and corrugated metal construction, there was little chance of saving the building. There was a huge risk of fire spreading to neighbouring residential and commercial properties due to the fire's size, strong winds and the radiated heat. The first crew on the scene from Freshwater set about attacking the fire from the west side using 2 main jets with breathing apparatus wearers protecting the parish hall and cars in the car park with covering jets. Residents were also evacuated from neighbouring flats. The second crew from Newport were tasked with attacking the fire from the east side and at the same time protecting residential flats from fire spread. The third crew on the scene, also from Newport, attacked the fire from the south side while protecting residential buildings on Kendall Road. The Cows crew protected properties further along the Broadway from embers carried in the wind. The Shanklin crew were tasked with protecting thatched properties just off Western Road, also from embers carried in the wind. Risks encountered by the crews included difficult access, overhead power cables burning and falling, and strong winds. Fire hydrants and a water carrier were utilised to provide water supply to the fire ground. Working together, crews extinguished the fire and prevented any escalation of the incident by protecting all neighbouring properties with no damage to cars, residential or commercial buildings, and no injuries to residents. Crews left the scene at 11 p.m. after damping down and returned on Monday at 7:30 a.m. to check the area using thermal imaging cameras for any hot spots, with the incident being closed at 8 a.m. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service said the hut was destroyed by fire and that the cause of the blaze was unknown.
The development of the now deserted Camp Hill prison in Parkhurst is not a priority for the new Isle of Wight Council. Despite infrastructure improvements and a hope to build more than 1,000 homes on the brownfield site in Parkhurst, Deputy Leader of the Council, Councillor Ian Stevens, told the Neighbourhoods and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee last week the Alliance administration was not looking towards Camp Hill. Looking at the progress the housing strategy has made in the last year, Councillor Stevens was asked whether there were any items at risk. Councillor Stevens highlighted one area of the strategy, which was put together by the previous Conservative administration to work with the Ministry of Justice to bring forward the key strategic housing site to deliver homes in the next 10 years. Speaking after the meeting, Councillor Stevens says it was not one of the administration's priorities, with other sites to focus on. These are the former Ireland Learning Centre in Lake, Thompson House in Gatcombe and the former Western Academy in Totland, providing around 70 homes. The council has just been given nearly £1 million to invest in and build houses on the 3 brownfield sites. The former Tory administration wanted to turn Camp Hill into a garden village with an estimated 1,500 homes. The reworking of the St Mary's roundabout was done partially with the major development in mind to cope with the future increase in traffic. A £6.3 million deal had been brokered between the council and the Ministry of Justice to take over some of the prison estate's neglected highways and bring them up to scratch. It was hoped at the time the deal could help strengthen the partnership and make Camp Hill available for purchase.
Almost 3,000 second homes listed on the island. Hundreds of properties are sitting empty on the island and nearly 3,000 more are listed as second homes. The figures come as more households continue to be faced with homelessness. Figures from the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities show there were at least 767 empty properties on the island at the most recent count in October, which was up 11% from 689 last year. Of those, 436 had been gathering dust for 6 months or more, and at least 112 had been abandoned for more than 2 years. The figures, which cover properties subject to council tax, also show 2,946 dwellings in the area were listed as second homes last month. Different DLUHC figures show in 2020 to 21, 700 households on the Isle of Wight were entitled to council support after becoming homeless or at risk of homelessness. Other data shows 82 island households were at risk of homelessness after they were served with a valid Section 21 notice between April 2019 and June 2021. This notice allows landlords to evict a tenant at short notice and without a reason. The Local Government Association has called on the government to give local authorities greater powers to acquire empty homes. A spokesman for the LGA, which represents councils, said, "At a time when we face a chronic housing shortage across the country and high levels of homelessness, it is wrong for so many homes to be left empty." Polly Neat, Chief Executive of housing charity Shelter, said the housing emergency was ruining lives, adding it was deeply frustrating to see properties sitting empty when so many people were in desperate need. She said, "Even if we filled every one of these empty properties, we still wouldn't have solved the chronic housing shortage we face. The only way to solve the housing crisis is to build a new generation of green social housing." On the island, a team of the know-how of the legalities, benefits and rights and responsibilities within the beleaguered rental sector is Citizens' Advice. As previously reported, people caught up in the current rental crisis can find accurate and independent help and advice available through the local team. The rental crisis deepened on the island post-COVID as rising house prices made landlords sell up, and there was more investment in staycation or second home properties. As a result, the supply of rental properties dropped by 82% in 2 years.
Sewage shame. 2 island beaches were the worst in the UK for sewage discharges in the last year, according to pressure group Surfers Against Sewage. A report released yesterday, Thursday, reveals the extent of the national sewage pollution crisis, highlighting Cowes and Gurnard as the worst affected by sewage discharges in the UK. In that time, Gurnard had 321 discharges, the highest incident of sewage discharge in the UK, according to SAS. Cowes closely followed with 318 discharges. Earlier this year, Southern Water was slammed for its performance and was fined £90 million. However, the utility firm argues that discharge is made up of around 95% of rainwater and denies that raw, untreated sewage is pumped out. According to the SAS report, the 2 island locations suffered the most sewer overflow discharges in the country. The location that comes closest to Gurnard and Cowes is Paul's Shore Road in the Wessex Water region with 297 discharges. The 4 locations that have received the most sewage discharge in the Southern Water region, covering the Isle of Wight and South East England, are Cowes, Gurnard, Ryde and Sandown. Earlier this month, MPs voted to require water companies to reduce outflows, but insisted it was too expensive to replace the infrastructure. That would mean companies could be forced to stop doing it altogether. Welcoming the new Environment Bill, Surfers Against Sewage said the final result may not be the best act, but it is a much, much better act than it may have been, and that is thanks to the tireless campaigning of ocean activists. There are new requirements for companies to monitor and report on sewage discharges and to progressively reduce the adverse impact of discharges from storm overflows.
Little donkeys at Sanctuary will be busy this Christmas. Christmas Christmas is a busy time for donkeys at the Isle of Wight Donkey Sanctuary in Wroxall. Donkeys are being prepared for trips with Mary and Joseph to Bethlehem at schools, churches, nursing homes, hotels and village festivals all around the island. The staff at the sanctuary said the donkeys love all the fuss and attention they get during these occasions, and the animals thoroughly enjoy the stimulus of meeting new people and doing different things. However, it is also an important time for the sanctuary to host events and engage with its local community. There are 2 of the ever-popular carol services which will be held at the sanctuary on December the 11th and 12th. The carol services will be held in the stable with the donkeys, who have been busy practising the choruses to the carols. There are lovely Christmas gifts to be brought from Browse and Bray's gift shop, and donkey adoptions are available online or in the gift shop. Among the sanctuary's newest arrivals are 7 new donkeys, including 3 foals, Lucky, Lola and Hovis, who would all appreciate some support from the public this Christmas. Grazer's Cafe is open throughout the Christmas period, serving a selection of hot and cold snacks and meals, with a speciality Christmas tea already proving popular. The sanctuary is open all year round, 7 days a week, from 10 a.m. until 4:30 p.m, with the exception of Christmas Day, and it is free entry and free parking. The Isle of Wight Donkey Sanctuary began in 1987 with a single donkey, Dylan. It became a registered charity in 1991 and moved to the current location in Wroxall in 1993. Since then it has continued to grow, rescuing more donkeys, building new barns and field shelters, and converting a barn into a new cafe with more plans for the future. The Isle of Wight Donkey Sanctuary currently has a large number of donkeys, ponies and 1 mule, all of whom are either rescued or abandoned. They are given a forever home in 55 acres of countryside, where they get first-class care and welfare. More than 50 volunteers support the staff at the sanctuary to ensure the donkeys want for nothing. The sanctuary survives because of the goodwill of supporters and visitors, so pop in this Christmas and help to support the rescued animals who live there.
Town in the festive mood. There was a fabulous festive feel-good factor in Newport Town Centre when it hosted its Days of Christmas event on Saturday. Hundreds of families from the town and surrounding area, not to mention hordes of shoppers from all 4 corners of the island, descended on Newport to enjoy anything from ice skating and a festive market to live performances throughout the day. The event was arranged by Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council, the aim being to celebrate the area's community and bring some festive joy and vibrancy to the island's county town. There was a Christmas market in St Thomas's Square, which featured more than 20 local makers and producers displaying their crafts and gifts. To warm the cockles, Christmas music was provided by the musicians of Abbey Brass and the Sandown and Shanklin Brass Band. And the Isle of Wight Donkey Sanctuary brought along some of those donkeys, and there were Siberian Huskies. There was even tap dancing and a magic show in the town centre and ice skating at Newport Quay. The day concluded with the traditional Christmas light switch on with a lantern parade.
And that's all we have time for today. So it's goodbye from Madeline.
And goodbye from Pauline. The In Touch programme follows and the scaffolding news is after that. Your questions answered, In Touch. We had an inbox brimming with your questions and investigation requests, and so this programme is dedicated to getting you some answers. On the programme, we speak to the BBC News at 10's Executive News Editor, Paul Royal, about the lack of English audio translations on their reports from Afghanistan. We speak to Virgin Media O2's Chief TV and Entertainment Officer, David Bouchier, about their lack of a talking electronic programme guide on their latest set-top box. And from access to pictures on the TV to access to pictures in a gallery, we had a request to investigate the lighting situation in some of the exhibitions at the British Museum. The museum were not available, and so we invited lighting experts, ASCO Lights, to tell us what solutions they recommend. The presenter, Peter Wight, and the producer, Beth Hemmings.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Tonight, your questions answered. Everything from why TV news often doesn't provide voice translations of contributors speaking in a foreign language, to the state of the lighting at the British Museum, with a complaint about talking TV programme guides, or rather the lack of them, along the way. Now, this first unanswered question is directed at us here at the BBC. It came into our inbox following our criticisms of Channel 4 after the fire, which meant no audio description from them for several weeks. But we've basically been accused of being the pot calling the kettle black. Keith Wells says the BBC continues to show a total lack of consideration with regard to its blind and partially sighted viewers on its 10 p.m. news broadcasts by not including English translations when reporting from Afghanistan. This has occurred on many occasions over the last few months. And in fact, here's an example of exactly what Keith means. This went out on BBC News just a couple of weeks ago.
The pickup trucks just keep coming. From here, it's a 7-hour journey through the desert to Pakistan. But there are whole families here too. Aren't you worried about going with all these young children? At times it feels as if the whole of Afghanistan is trying to find a way out.
Well, I'm joined by the executive news editor of the 6 and 10 o'clock programmes, Paul Royal. Paul, I'm sure I don't have to tell you just how exasperating that is for a visually impaired person who can't read the subtitles.
We totally understand that. And I just want to sort of reassure listeners at the beginning of all of this that BBC News should always be available and accessible to all. That's a fundamental thing. And so in terms of Keith's contact with you, I'm grateful for listeners and viewers raising this issue.
But Paul, this isn't a new complaint. Indeed, In Touch in the past has had assurances that this would be given more consideration. So why is it still happening?
I think there's something particular around the Afghanistan story, and I'll try and explain why, which is there is something in the editorial guidelines around allowing to have subtitles and hear the foreign language voice, particularly in incidents where you're trying to sort of fully convey the emotion of the voice and the situation. It is quite specific around this particular story, is because of the intensity of what happened. I think actually the balance now has got out of kilter, and we are addressing it, and we have spoken to teams.
Yeah, because it's all very well to say that you want all your viewers to hear the emotion, but what you're actually achieving is that some of your viewers aren't hearing anything at all that they can understand.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting point, and the conversations we've had inside BBC News have come up with some sort of, in the short term at least, some potential ways ahead. And so, for example, is there a way in which we hear more of the foreign language voice to begin with before then bringing in the English translation into it, and so that everyone can get a sense of that emotion?
Well, I was going to play this at the end of our interview, but as you've raised it, we've had a go at doing exactly what you're saying should be attempted, because we thought we needed to show you how to do it. So, what about this?
The pickup trucks just keep coming. From here, it's a 7-hour journey through the desert to Pakistan. But there are whole families here too. Aren't you worried about going with all these young children?
We have no choice. There is no work. My husband used to work for the government. I used to be a teacher in a school in Kabul. I haven't had my salary for the last 2 or 3 months from the government. I was helpless. What can I give my children to eat?
At times it feels as if the whole of Afghanistan is trying to find a way out.
So that was our attempt at it. I can see that we could have let it run a little longer with the genuine voice in Afghanistan, but you see what we were trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just to sort of reassure listeners and people who've got in touch, these are the sort of conversations we've been having, since this issue sort of re-emerged at the end of the summer. And I think you're right. I think you'd let it run longer. Programme teams and producers would just have to allow the pieces to be slightly longer to reflect all of that. But I think, it's a good example of, how we could move forward in a way which works for everyone. Hopefully one day across the BBC, there'll be technological solutions to all aspects of accessing, our content and our coverage. But I think in the sort of short to medium term, this sort of thing could be a way forward. One other aspect that I'd like to bring in, and I'm sure you're aware of this as well, which is obviously with digital platforms and in the sort of digital information age and with the rise of Netflix and the sort of tendency for subtitling and for perhaps surprisingly audiences, and particularly younger audiences, to be happy with subtitles. I think there's a greater tendency amongst producers and teams to sort of see subtitling as a way which works without necessarily remembering that, this isn't the case right across the audience spectrum.
Well, doing this is a way of perhaps hopefully reminding them that you are missing out a chunk of your audience. Just while we've got you there, Paul, on the subject of audio description, I mean, we appreciate that there are problems with audio describing news generally because of its immediacy. But has any thought been given at least to audio describing longer pre-prepared news reports, more like the mini features which BBC News sometimes does?
Yeah, absolutely. We're not there yet, but it is something we've discussed over the last year or two. Could we get to a place where those pieces can come with audio description? I mean, Peter, the news business, even the stuff that we think is going to be pre-prepared quite often still doesn't make it into the building until, quite late in the day. But again, I think these are exactly the sort of things, along with the stuff we were talking about earlier, which should go some way to mitigate some of these issues, because it is often the longer pre-made foreign films where, this is an issue which obviously crops up.
Well, Paul Royal, thank you very much indeed. Keith and the rest of us will be watching to see if there's a change in this. Paul Royal, thanks very much. And we stay with access to television programmes. Now, when we had the communications regulator of Ofcom on the programme a few weeks back, they said that they expected major TV platforms to be able to provide talking electronic programme guides to give visually impaired people information about upcoming programmes in a form that they could use. But one of our listeners says that Virgin Media's EPG on its latest set-top box still doesn't do this. Describing the conversations he's had with Virgin Media, Colin Lamont emailed,
"They say that it does have a voice-activated remote control that I can use to change channels. This is not what I and other blind customers are asking for. When I asked them for a number to complain to, they told me to call 150, which just puts me to their call centre, where nobody knows what I'm talking about, because they're all just trained to read off a script. If I do demand to make a complaint, I'm put through to somebody else who says they're very sorry I'm having these problems and they'll look into it. I'm hoping you can actually talk to somebody from Virgin Media who's higher up and can tell us when the talking EPG will be put in place."
Well, Colin, will their Chief TV and Entertainment Officer for Virgin Media O2 do? I do hope so, because David Boucher is here. So let's hope he's high enough for you. David, Virgin Media has been promising this for a couple of years now. Why hasn't Colin got what he wants yet?
First of all, I'd like to apologise to Mr Lamont for his experience. It seems that the agent that he spoke to may have confused our voice search and control feature, which is available on our TV360 remote control through a voice-activated microphone button, with the text-to-voice control for a speech-enabled accessible user interface.
So can we explain exactly what Colin can now get on your latest piece of equipment, your latest EPG?
So what we have on our new generation TV360 box is a high contrast option for the user interface, and this allows users to switch the screen so that the colours are much more clearly discernible. The second thing that we do is we highlight those programs that contain subtitles as well as audio described programming, and this appears on the user interface and is clearly marked. So as recently as last month, we also introduced a Zoom TV guide, which is channel 555 for those who have the TV 360 box. And that provides a much enhanced version of the TV guide and has specifically enlarged elements and text. In addition, from the launch of our TV 360 box, we've also had text-to-speech capability, but we do it via our TV Go app. Now, that Go app is available for both iOS and Android devices. And the way that it works is it uses the native voice-to-speech capability of both iOS and Android. And you are then able to have a text-to-speech complete user interface together with a text-to-speech remote control that will then control the box directly. So although the user interface currently on our boxes does not have text-to-speech, the app does, which has the same functionality.
But I mean, A, that still sounds quite complicated, and B, you still need another element in order to use it, don't you?
Yes, to be clear, this is not the situation we would like. We were hoping to have the new text-to-speech user interface available this calendar year, but unfortunately, we've been slightly delayed in the development. I am pleased to say that it is now in test, so we are testing it with a number of customers this month. And as you'll appreciate, of all the developments that we are doing for the accessibility of our user interface, the text-to-speech is actually one of the most complicated. And for that reason, we've got to get it right. We need to get it right first time. And we apologise that it hasn't arrived in the timeline we would have liked, but we have the intention that it should appear in the first quarter of next year.
But other UK platforms have got text-to-speech on their EPGs that are giving programme scheduling information. Also, I understand that this has been available in the States since about 2016. So why not you?
As you can imagine, set-top box technology is an international business. We don't have a dedicated box that is made just for us. So we have an international product that we then define additional features in order to have it suitable for the UK market. We only launched the product from February this year to new customers. So we had hoped to get it in within the calendar year, as I say, and we may be up to 3 months late.
And we have been talking to Ofcom about this, and they're not that happy with you.
Virgin assured us that they plan to implement all of the required accessibility features in their new Horizon 360 box, but they disappointingly did not commit to a definitive timeframe. Virgin, like all other EPG providers, has a deadline to submit its annual accessibility report to us by the end of November, and we are due to report on the industry's progress in the spring of next year. But on account of your listeners' experience and understandable frustrations, we've been in touch with the company to ask it to provide a more immediate update on its progress.
So they were asking for something by the end of November. Are you going to be able to do that? Is that more or less what you've told us here, that this should be ready in the first 3 months of next year?
Yes, we will be reporting that we're now in test with the feature, and we are committed to seeing this launch in the first quarter of next year.
Colin, I hope we'll be pleased to hear that. David Boucher, thank you very much. And now, from pictures on a TV screen to pictures in a gallery. We've had this from Brian Snowden.
I'm visually impaired and I love museums. I've been disappointed that the British Museum's last 2 exhibitions, Nero and Thomas à Becket, have been so dark that I struggle to get round them, as I'm worried about bumping into an object or another guest. I'm a member, so I suggested to the British Museum that they might think about some better light sessions for visually impaired members, acknowledging that, of course, some exhibits have to be in low light.
And Brian went on to say this was the response he had. We appreciate your feedback on temporary exhibitions accessibility and propose to use this feedback to inform the design of future exhibitions. Unfortunately, the lighting that we currently use isn't adjustable, either on or off. But we can look at this possibility for future events. We do run audio described tours, both online and on site for visually impaired visitors. Well, Brian told us he didn't think that was really good enough, and could we look into it? So we did invite someone from the museum onto the programme to discuss this. They told us no one was available in our timescale, 10 days notice, but instead we're going to talk to a lighting expert about the kind of things which could be done to help visually impaired people in this situation. AJ Vazdev is the founding director of ASCO Lights, and they have worked with businesses to install lighting that works for visually impaired people, and amongst those have been museums and galleries. AJ, first of all, can I just first quote you what the British Museum did tell us in quite a long email? They said, "We set gallery lighting very much for a visitor experience in mind. However, this must also be balanced with conservation requirements. Many of the objects in our exhibitions are on loan from other museums and collections from around the globe. We have to comply with lender guidelines on lighting levels, particularly for those objects for which excessive light exposure is a risk." That's a legitimate point, isn't it? I mean, that's something a museum would have to worry about.
Yeah, I think it's quite a valid point that they put forward there. I think as an industry or as an environment, I think the museums are probably the worst case scenario when it comes to looking at those with visual impairments. But generally, you know, the brief that centres around sort of museums is looking about creating light, shadows, textures, and their whole emphasis is all about sort of lighting those objects and paintings.
What kinds of lighting technology exists on the market right now that would help visually impaired people, but perhaps some that the British Museum could consider?
Typically, what we would be looking at doing is to look at sort of more specific lighting, which would be low-level marker lighting, lighting that can be used to sort of be more intelligent. There's one technology which I'm not too sure if your readers have heard of or your listeners have heard of called yellow dot technology. So this is typically where you probably see this being used at the moment, where we've got the headphones and we've got the sort of interactive experience where we've got audio feedback. But what we can do with this particular technology, we can add an app to this where the app would recognise that that person is visually impaired. And as they're walking around specific areas of that museum, the light levels would automatically be ramped up, or sort of low-level lighting would come on automatically, so making that experience much more pleasing for those people. So we've entered into a room, moving from one space to another, automatically that triggers on a certain luminaire.
Of course, funding these kinds of technologies is presumably down to the business themselves. From your experience, have businesses been prepared to fork out for this kind of thing in the past?
I'll be really honest with you, not yet. The technology's out there, but I think what they've got to do is to raise the awareness initially and obviously, you know, get involved in this, which would make the whole experience so much better.
Just to be absolutely clear, this wouldn't have the kind of worrying effects that the museum quoted about, you know, dangers to their pictures.
No, because what we're really focusing upon here is sort of walkway lighting. We're not going to deteriorate what's on display. We're looking secondary lighting in and around sort of, you know, from walking from one space to another as it was. So we can get around that quite easily. OK,
AJ Vazdev, thank you very much for coming on. Well, too many complaints about one thing and another to fit them all in this programme, so we'll try to squeeze in some more in the weeks to come, when we also hope to meet a blind mayor. You've heard that before? What about two in the same household? You can email in touch with your comments on anything you've heard in the programme, intouch@bbc.co.uk. You can leave your voicemails on 0161 836 1338 or go to our website bbc.co.uk/intouch. From me, Peter Wight, producer Beth Hemmings and studio managers Richard Hannaford and David Crackles. Goodbye.
Scaffolding and skips news for the week commencing the 29th of November. In the Ventnor area at 16 Pier Street, Miramar Court, Hamborough Court, and a skip outside South Bank, Park Avenue.
In the Ryde area, Arcadia 10 Esplanade, 2, that's French Franks in St Thomas's Square, Jack's is 75 Union Street, King Lud 2 Esplanade, Candy Shop 68 High Street, 9 Esplanade, 1B Cross Street, and at the Ryde Dental Surgery 188 A High Street, and there are skips at 42 St Michael's Avenue.
In the freshwater area at 4 Mower Place and Double Dragon 7 Tennyson Road. In the Newport area, the Old Mill, St Cross Lane, Red Squirrel, Pyle Street, the Lord Louis Library in Orchard Street, the Man in the Moon, 16 to 17 St James Street, and Boots, 122 to 126 High Street.
And in the Cowes area, 3 York Street, Old NatWest Bank at 104 High Street, Cowes Conservative Club, 3 Beckford Road, Jersey Cottage, Market Hill and Sunhill, and the Fountain Inn, High Street.